Have you ever tried the Immortal's nectar? It's a kind of milk, both fishy and astringent. Don't dismiss it as mere breast milk. In ancient times, it was a prized currency for wellness among the rich and powerful. Today, we shall tell the story of. My name is Taya Wigwin, and I am the third legitimate daughter of the Zhou family of Lingnan. Although the Zhou family held no political power, they had built their fortune as salt merchants, becoming the wealthiest in the region. From a young age, under my mother's tutelage, I learned to play the qin, studied the classics, recited poetry, and practiced calligraphy. Our guests all praised me for being well-read and well-mannered, gentle and graceful in my bearing. After I turned 16, my figure grew ethereal, my skin became as white as snow, and my eyes held a captivating, expressive gaze. Word soon spread among the neighbors that the second Miss Zhou was the greatest beauty in all of Lingnan. In my 17th year, I, against all expectations, fell in love with one of our family's long-term laborers, a delivery man. His name was Aki. He was a descendant of the Kunlun slaves, with jet-black skin and a thick, coarse accent. I shouldn't have given him a second glance, but whenever he passed beneath my embroidery chamber, the look in his eyes as he gazed up reminded me so much of the distant traveler on a southern wind from my poems. We met in secret, leaving our shadows beneath the flower trellises and behind the woodshed. That night, as we were whispering and huddled together in a corner, we were discovered by a maid. My father was enraged. I was made to kneel all night in the ancestral hall, while he was beaten until his flesh was raw and torn. Yet I uttered not a sound, for my heart was already his. A few days later, I climbed over the wall to elope, taking with me only a few taels of silver and a heart full of defiant courage. At first, life was hard, but our days were sweet. He would pull me into his arms and tell me I smelled as sweet as honey. Pressing against his chest, I would tell him he was like the wind, tickling my heart with a restless longing. But alas, life cannot be sustained on sweet words alone. Once the money ran out, his patience became like a frayed piece of cloth, tearing at the slightest tug. If I was a moment too slow serving his congee, he would overturn the bowl. If I stumbled ever so slightly, he would slap my face. He was worse when drunk. His fist would crash down, and with a sickening crack from my nose, my world would go black. And still, I would cower at his feet, whispering "Brother Aki," like a dog whimpering for its master's affection. As my belly began to swell with child, his beatings grew even more vicious. All I could do was force a smile, hoping his heart would soften and he would let me have the child. That night, through the howling wind and driving rain, I gave birth all alone. He didn't even glance at our child. The very next day, he brought another woman home to sleep on the bedding I had sewn myself. Clutching my dark-skinned baby, I lay on a burlap sack outside the door, my clothes soaked through, yet I refused to leave. After he fell ill, he began to cough up blood and run a fever, wasting away to skin and bones. The other woman fled, and our neighbors avoided him like the plague. Only I remained to watch over him, brewing his medicine and bathing his body, never leaving his side day or night. The physician said he was beyond saving. I refused to believe it. I pawned my only gold hairpin for a few packets of herbs. But it was nowhere near enough. Though the sickness ravaged his body, the pain was all in my heart. He was, after all, my brother Aki, the man who had once been my companion. Adding to my despair, the baby cried in my arms, with nothing to eat but the milk from my own breast. In my moment of utter desperation, a female broker knocked on the door. She stood at my doorway and said, "The Zhao mansion is seeking the Immortal's nectar. For a fresh source like you, the pay is excellent. It's enough to buy medicine for your man and secure a wealthy life for yourself." Upon hearing this, good news, the only phrase that registered in my mind was, "buy medicine." I hastily agreed. The next day, the broker led me into the Zhao mansion, a sprawling compound of high walls and deep courtyards, with pearl-like ornaments dangling from its eaves. I crossed the vermilion threshold with my head bowed, each step feeling as if I were descending into a deep, still well. They called it the lactation quarters, but it had long ceased to be a place where women simply nursed their own infants. The first order of business in the quarters was a ritual cleansing. Coarse-serving women poured basin after basin of water over me, scraped my body, and steamed it with herbs, a process they euphemistically called expelling the fishy and extracting the impure to ensure the milk's purity. Afterward, I was made to drink a bowl of frothy soup. It was as bitter as bile and designed to induce a surge of both blood and milk. The old matron in the next room put it bluntly, "This Immortal's nectar, what they truly want is a mouthful of your very lifeblood." At first, it was twice a day. The milk would be collected in a cup, warmed by a young servant, and taken to the main chambers to be consumed with bird's nest, deer antler, and honeyed pine nuts. The master of the house claimed that the Immortal's nectar was no ordinary milk. Sourced from primiparous women, whose qi and blood were at their most abundant, it could soothe the nerves, fortify the yang energy, and preserve a youthful appearance. They even had a physician prescribe a formula, listing criteria that were posted in the main hall like a proclamation. The milk must be a lustrous white. A faint fishy taste is ideal. Its nature must be warm, not arid. Before long, milk from a cup was deemed no longer live enough. Several powerful men, having heard of a court practice known as live drinking, began to emulate it at their banquets. We were ordered to kneel before the guests at their seats for the ritual of drinking directly from the source. The guests would exclaim in praise, "It enters the mouth warm, like ginger, and washes down the throat with a sweetness tinged with musk. Truly, the essence of heaven and earth." I had no choice but to smile, no courage to disobey. While my lips murmured yes, my heart felt like a parched weed, forced to stand tall in the wind even as I knew I was withering away. Later, a strange new formula emerged, claiming that the Immortal's nectar, if mixed with a girl's first crimson tide, could restore youth and prolong life. The steward never spoke of it plainly, but on certain days each month, he would bring me a new medicinal soup. It was the color of cinnabar, its bitterness laced with an unsettling sweetness. I drank it every time, accepting it as the price for this life I was living. Some asked if I felt shame. But between starving to death and staying alive, shame is hardly the most pressing concern. All I knew was that the silver earned from each cup could buy medicine, could be sent home, and could stop Aki from coughing up blood. It could ensure my own child had milk to drink. I kept a daily account, carefully sewing every silver coin I earned into the lining of my tunic. The Zhao family considered me a premium wet nurse, and so my purifications, diet, and daily life were all managed with the same care afforded to a lady of high station. I appeared radiant, but no one knew that at night. My chest burned like fire, while my hands and feet were chilled to the bone. It was only when the silver bell rang that I knew I was still of use. They would laugh, calling the milk as sweet as honey, saying it could replenish one's vital energy and nourish the body from within. But I knew it was no divine elixir. It was my very life, wrung from my body day after day, dissolving drop by drop into their cups. 3 years later, I was replaced by a newcomer and reassigned to the kitchens to brew medicinal herbs. After collecting my final month's bonus, I took the 30 taels of silver I had saved, bought myself a set of fine clothes and some delicate fabric, and boarded a boat heading south. All along the journey, I wondered, how old would my child be now? Had Aki recovered from his illness? Had the silver I sent home ever bought him a bowl of warm medicine? When I returned to Lingnan, the courtyard wall was half collapsed, and the ground before the door was choked with weeds. A neighbor lamented that the child had succumbed to a fever after 3 days that winter, and Aki himself had died of thirst the following year. As for the money I'd sent back, sister-in-law Zhang had claimed it was for medicine, but she had long since used it to build a new house and find a wife for her son. Standing before the ruined house, the bundle on my back suddenly felt weightless. The wind whistled through the broken walls, lifting the hem of my robe and scattering the old silver notes across the ground. So much like those cups of warm, Immortal's drink I had earned on my knees all these years. I remembered them saying it was warm and sweet as honey, a tonic that nourished the body and prolonged life, the most precious delicacy on a nobleman's table. Only now do I understand. This so-called Immortal's drink was never about health. It was about taking a woman's body and dignity and brewing them into a sweet broth for their cups, a broth both rank and bitter, yet utterly addictive. I was once the most beautiful maiden in Lingnan, and I was also what the powerful called premium fresh milk. But in the end, I was nothing more than the dregs at the bottom of a cup, to be discarded once drained. This was the fabled Immortal's drink, and this was my wretched fate.